in for them on Tuesday. This particular verses and the whole idea, I was really convicted about. You go through seasons, I'm sure all of us do, where you really start to like reflect on maybe some of the decisions you make and where you're at, and hopefully we do that all on a regular basis. So really and truthfully, this teaching that I'm trying to share with you guys tonight is one of dealing with me personally, and hopefully you're blessed by it. And I titled it Principles of the Kingdom, and titled Love. And if you guys have heard me talk a couple times, especially with the youth, it's usually concerning the kingdom, because Yeshua spoke about that more than almost anything. And think about it, we're out here on Tuesday night, it's ice cold, and why are we here? Hopefully we're here because we believe in a kingdom that was preached thousands of years ago, and we walk by faith with that we know that this eternal kingdom is coming one day, and it will be revealed to the whole world. But for us right now, we believe by faith, and I'm pretty sure that's what brings us all here as a community, because we believe in that. And one of the big principles of this kingdom is love, and maybe not love the way the world would express it, but this kingdom is based on a selfless kingdom. Its principles are eternal principles. They're not temporal principles. As this world that we live in right now, most of the focus on anything is temporal, and we focus on these things that are fleeting and not eternal things. And so the greatest example is our King, and I always like bringing up this verse because Yeshua is being confronted by Pilate, and they're about to put him to death. And in John 18:33 and 38. No problem. Okay. Is that better? Okay. All right. Thanks, Ken. Okay. In John 18:33 to 38. Pilate went back into the praetorium, summoned Yeshua, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Yeshua answered, "Are you saying this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done?" Yeshua answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews, but now my kingdom is not of this realm." And so, in this particular situation, he's confronted with a situation where he's going to be put to death. And Pilate is a little concerned about why he's placed there. And later on he says, "Well, don't you know I have the power to take your life?" And as you can see right here, in Yeshua's response is, "My kingdom is not of this world." Okay? If it were, my servants would be helping me right now. And so we see in this kingdom is not concerned with the temporal idea of, I better not do that because I might lose my life. And so we see one of the big principles is focusing on the eternal, the end goal, not what's going on right here. And you see it all throughout the lives of the apostles. They're praising God and singing praise songs in jail. They're being whipped. They counted all joy that they were able to suffer for his namesake. And it's because they had a true understanding that this world is just a stair step onto something greater. Okay? And so, when we think about that, there's all these principles that they have that's exact opposite of what we focus on today. You look at social media, what is it? It's usually, there are some profitable things on social media, but a lot of times it's, look how great I look how great this happened, bragging, how taking selfies and things like that, and it's all this temporal stuff. It's not eternal stuff. And so, it's really interesting when he's confronted by this, that this was his response. And you can see, even Pilate at the end of it, he asked this question. All right, and this is the second part of 33 to 38. "Then you are a king," Pilate said. "You say that I am a king," Yeshua answered. "For this reason I was born and have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." "What is truth?" Pilate asked. I was thinking about that, and it says, "For this reason I was born and came into the world," and he's called a king. But what is he a king of? I think we all know he's the kingdom of he's the king of this kingdom that's coming. But think about it. If his example that he gave us on this earth was for us to follow, and we follow a king, right? Then we would see some characteristics about him that would make him a leader. I think about when they asked me to step into leadership here at Brenham, I prayed about it for about 6 weeks. And I remember Rabbi Eric making a comment and saying, "Man, I know how to get rid of you." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, I asked you to do something. I don't see you for a while." And ultimately, I was really genuinely thinking about this, saying, "Lord, do I really want to take on the responsibility of being in leadership? Because I don't want to do anything for my own self-gain or my own self, edification." It was a situation where I said, am I really going to take this serious? Because, as we learn in this kingdom that's different than what we see in the world, it's a kingdom of servanthood. And so I really wanted to make sure that, hey, was I willing to do this? And even getting up here doing teachings, I don't claim to be a great teacher. I just want to fill in for my brothers and sisters when they really need me. And I hope that when I do these, that's my goal, is just to help out in the body. And so the title was Love, and we're just going to look at a few principles. Obviously a lot of stuff can be attached to this, but the principles of this are 1 John 4:6. We are of God. He who knows God hears us. He who is not of God does not hear us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. Okay? So then we see there's two different spirits. I've read over this passage, and there's another passage I'm going to share with you guys that I've read over several years and never really thought about it. But I was talking to a sister here last Oneg, and I said, isn't it crazy to think that we have the Ruach that comes alongside? He doesn't really make decisions for us, but he'll come alongside of us, and he'll nudge you in a direction. This is really what you should be doing. This is really, what this situation needs. And sometimes we follow, and sometimes we fail. And her situation is her brother just passed. And she said, I really felt like I didn't do enough. I didn't share enough. I just prayed, and I really felt like I let him down a little bit because, I didn't step out in faith and be a little bit more bold with my, my sharing with him. And I said, and then apparently she was going to take him to some medical procedure, and he died overnight. But I said, well, I said, if you don't step up, God's always got somebody else. The Spirit's always moving. If you weren't willing to step up, somebody else would step up. His plans and purposes aren't going to be judged by or determined by whether or not we step in. And she said, you're right. She said that day a doctor came up and just out of nowhere started sharing with him about the story of Yeshua in the boat, and really took him to task and said, do you believe? And her brother's like, yes, I do. And she goes, it's just so, she goes, I called him the next day and said, you being a doctor, that's pretty bold for you to get out and not know where somebody's standing with the Lord in this day and age, and ask them, do you truly know him? She said, you're right. And I said, well, isn't that a wonderful thing? Isn't that a thing that sets you free to know that, hey, he's got us, and he's gonna make a way. And so it was really encouraged. And so basically we talked a little bit more about the spirit of truth and spirit of error. It's kind of a little bit disturbing that there's a spirit also at work in people that don't know God. Mm-hmm. And we saw it with the synagogue situation today, or whenever that did happen. I saw the post today where people will do terrible things to one another, and there's a spirit that prods people on to do these things. Here's the other passage dealing with that spirit. And you have been made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of air, the spirit who now works in the sons of disobedience. So now we see that there's this spirit that, just like we have the Ruach, they have this spirit. And I can't help but think, where it talks about that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. And I really do believe, Catherine was talking, I think last youth, you know, we were talking a little bit about prayer and how much prayer is neglected. And really and truthfully, I made a comment. I went to a fellowship that had 2,000 people, and I remember I really started feeling convicted about my prayer life. And so I said, I'm going to be very diligent and make sure I make the weekly prayer meetings. And in that congregation of 2,000 people, there was 10 people there roughly every week, 5 to 10 people. And I made the comment to her. I said, you can go to a congregation of 200 or 2,000. There's usually about 5 or 10 people, that'll show up. And that's not in every congregation. Some places they have a little bit more faithfulness in that. But I can't help but think, if we really truly believed that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, we would be at the prayer meetings. And we're not. And so, that was one thing that convicted me, as I'm thinking about, and I know it's the Gregorian New Year or the worldly New Year, but, I don't see a problem with that. I heard a pastor a week or two ago say something about, like, people have a problem with New Year's resolutions. And he goes, I don't have a problem with it all. And when I really started thinking about it, I don't have a problem with it either. I love that we have New Moon. I love that we have Shabbat. I love that we have a Torah cycle, even how we read the scriptures, that we can always come back around and do a little evaluation and go, hey, where am I at in this situation? Where am I at? So I love the idea of the new year coming around, no matter what new year it is, and start to determine what I might need to change. And I was talking to my kids and my wife, and Rabbi Eric last week was talking about, until you get your family right, then it can't affect the congregation, which then would affect the nation, which then would affect the whole world. And so here we are. I told, not that we're off and doing a bunch of terrible stuff, but are we focused on what God put me on this earth for? And that's where I'm at. If I'm supposed to be in leadership in a congregation, then my focus should be on what God brought me into this world for. The one verse that I shared with you guys in my testimony, Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. I need to get back to that, because I love God. I read my Bible. I'm not in some super, super crazy sin. But if I'm not focused on his kingdom and his plans, then how can I be successful in my family? And if I can't be successful with them, how am I ever going to be able to do anything God would want me to do, even in this congregation? And so, I don't know how I did that. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm tapping as I go.
Hand gesture.
Yeah. Okay. More of this promise. So we looked at the spirit of disobedience that's in the spirit of error that's in the children of disobedience. Now we'll look at why we can hear and why others can't hear. John 14, 16, and 17. And I will pray the Father, and he will give you another helper, that he may abide with you forever, the Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees him nor knows him. But you know him, for he dwells with you and will be in you. And that's a good hope. I think about the fact that I'm even convicted about where I'm at right now. It only came from the Spirit. There's nothing good in my flesh. If I was left to my own devices, I'd be chasing after things in this world, whatever, business, personal stuff. But the fact that he's still convicting me is at least a piece of knowing, hey, God's still got a plan for me, and it's up to me on whether or not I'm going to step up to the plate and make the right decisions. This is a kind of a passage that kind of goes along with that, of those that don't have the Spirit. His disciples began questioning him as to what this parable meant, and he said, to you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God, but to the rest it is in parables. So seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. Thinking about that, I've tried sharing with numerous people at work and with family members, and you can almost see that parable where it talks about how the word is like a seed, and you'll see it for a second in their mind. They'll start thinking, and then all of a sudden you can see the bird comes and it just goes away, and you can almost see their countenance from wow, that's a really great truth, to nothing. And so it's just one of those situations that I'm just so thankful for, that it hasn't happened to me that way. I have many more things to say to you, but you cannot bear them right now. But when he, the Spirit of truth, comes, he will guide you in all truth. For he will not speak on his own initiative, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will disclose to you what is to come. The Shema, when asking what is the greatest commands, Yeshua answered, the foremost is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no greater commandment than these. And I was reading recently, does anyone know why they cover their eyes and close their eyes at the same time when they say the Shema? Has anybody heard about that?
No distractions.
No distractions?
No distractions, but the rabbis teach that this is a world of lies. And so for us to be able to focus on these eternal truths, we close our eyes and we cover our eyes so that nothing around us can creep in and we can't focus on this great truth. And so I can't help but think that's a great thing, because I know how I am in the flesh. I'll sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to pray. And within about maybe 20 or 30 seconds, I start thinking about some random thing. And I'm like, Lord, forgive me.
Yes.
And then I'll stop and say, now I'm really going to do it. And it'll happen again. And it might happen 2 or 3 times. And then at some points, I'll just give up and go, I'm not.
Or you fall asleep.
Yeah, yeah. And so it does make sense that there's so many distractions that we can have that we would need to cover our eyes and close our eyes and go, okay, now, nothing to distract me. When Yeshua said this, it was interesting that the scribe, in the way he answered, the scribe said to him, right, teacher, you have truly stated that he is one and there is no one else besides him, and to love him with all your heart and with all your understanding, with all your strength, and to love one's neighbor as himself is much more than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices. When Yeshua saw that he had answered intelligently, he said, you are not far from the kingdom. And so thinking about these kingdom principles, we know that the focus is we love God with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and we love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think that's the difference in us as trying to be Torah observant, is that the reason why we keep the command. You know, it's easy sometimes. I think even when I first came into this understanding, and I was still wrestling with some of the things that traditional Christianity taught me, I think I was doing things just out of obligation. And it wasn't until later on that I started realizing, like, something as simple as keeping kashrut, kosher. Before it was like, well, I know I'm not supposed to eat this. And I wrestled with it for months. I remember the first time I heard Rabbi Eric, when we were at the old building, he did a teaching, and I was like, man, this guy just doesn't understand Acts 10 very well. and if I was brutally honest, I'm not going to throw this brother on the bus, because y'all all know him, but me and him left there and went somewhere, and we ate a pizza with every piece of pork on it and just kind of chuckled about the teaching. And it took, you know, probably several months, if I was honest. And I remember I was looking at the passage, and then all of a sudden it jumped out at me. Don't call anything common the Lord has cleansed. And I was like, wait a minute, he didn't say anything about unclean. He said common, so now I need to go back and research what does common mean. And when I came back from that understanding, I realized, hey, this is, so then I had the head knowledge, okay? So then I finally said, well, I'm not supposed to do this because, you know, God in his word teaches we're not. But it wasn't until probably another 6 months after of just keeping it because I knew it was right, to where I genuinely said, you know what? I want to do what he wants. And I know that he knows what's best for me. And it's never been an issue again. Now, I know brothers that have been walking in this longer than me that still are at the stage where they say, you know what? I'm doing this because I know it's right. But if it was okay, I would go do this or that. And not to make that a big thing, because I think that's one of the least commands, but the idea that I finally got to the point of where I can walk in something for the right reason. And I think that if we apply the Shema, where we know that he's one and we love him with all our heart, mind, soul, and strength, We're going to want to walk in those things that he wants. And then loving our neighbor as ourselves, all the commands that would be for loving your neighbor, you're going to want to do that. But you got to love your neighbor for it to be practiced in the right way. And I think that's what takes a lifetime. You know, I can learn something and it takes 2-3 months, but it might take a whole lifetime. And that's what I'm really hoping this new year. I'm hoping that I can learn how to love all you guys the way I should. You know, I don't know some of you. I mean, we see each other and we don't ever really get a chance to talk. But my hope is this new year that I can get to know more of you guys and can develop a relationship to where I can genuinely, if I'm doing something that's in the scriptures towards you, that it would be done for the right reason and in love. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. By this, the love of God was manifest in us, that he has sent his only begotten Son into this world so that we might live through him. So we see that how we know that he loves us and that he is love is this sacrifice he made. Okay? So love is sacrificial. A biblical love is sacrificial. And that's where it comes into community. I mean, you think about it, every week, just for us to get together, all the work that goes into preparing a meal, the people that prepare the meal after the service with Oneg, the people that prepare that, all the worship that they set up early in the morning, the cameras, the internet, all that. A lot of the people in this room, you guys are involved. But in most fellowships, it's usually the same handful of people doing it all. And so I really hope that we can grow as a community to where, you know, it might not apply to you guys. Some of you, it might. There might be an opportunity where you take a chance of even coming with me and Carrie out here every month. We meet once a month with the youth. You know, I've had a few people come and say, hey, I'd really like to come out and do a teaching. And we welcome that. You know, I remember taking out, I can't even believe I've been doing the youth now for a year. It was last December. And, you know, you think about a youth leader. He's not some crusty 44-year-old guy. He's like usually some young person like at this table over here, you know, that's just a little bit older than the youth. And it's funny when I told the story when we went to YMJ and they thought I was a pastor. They just couldn't get in their mind that I was just helping with the youth. And they're like, oh, Pastor, no. Because, you know, I'm old and gray. Not old, but in the sense of a youth leader, I'm a little old. But I got to say this, though. That opportunity of me being able to go and do these teachings with the kids and get to know them and to see how they've come together in unity, you know, it's like they're all tied together. They all hang out with one another. And even some of the new people that come in here, they say, you know what, we've been to a few fellowships, but I got to tell you, the young people here, they're not cliquey. They don't push the new people out, and they feel welcome here. And for me to be able to see that and to be a part of being able to teach them once a month, you know, some little principle, I think that's awesome. And, you know, I just really think that hopefully we can learn something from them, you know, because I encourage any of you guys that want to come out to the youth and see how the youth group works. It's great.
They got that love your neighbor part down, don't they?
Yeah. Very popular passage in scripture about love. Love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, love does not brag, it is not arrogant, does not act unbecomingly, it does not seek its own, it's not provoked, does not take into account wrong suffered, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Not to keep touting youth, but I remember the first year we went to the YMJ, and they had a talent show. And some of these poor kids, you know, this one young man, he got up there and he had the music in his headphones and he's just singing. So all you can hear is him sing. You can't hear any of the music. And he probably, you know, wasn't the best in his vocals. But to hear all these kids cheer him on, usually in like a high school or early, you know, get on the internet and see what's the thing. Tearing people down, right? Memes, the whole thing. It's all about tearing people down. For all these young people to get up and give them a standing ovation And it happened multiple times. And I thought, man, what a great environment, you know, because usually in an environment like that, you'll hear people say stuff behind there. And so that's why every year now, ever since that first time I went, I want to do everything I can to make sure that the kids are able to go to that, to be able to jump in. Because this passage right here was that YMJA talent show. They were, everything that's right here, they were doing. We give two examples of where the disciples didn't really understand what it meant to be great in the kingdom. And so we'll read two little sections right here. James and John, the two sons of Zebedee, came up to Jesus saying, "Teacher, you want us to do whatever we ask of you?" And he said to them, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Grant that we may sit one on your right and one on your left in your glory." Yeshua said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism which I'm about to be baptized?" They said to him, "We are able." Yeshua said to them, "The cup that I drink, you shall drink, and you shall be baptized with the baptism which I am baptized. But to sit at the right or my left, that is not mine to give, but is prepared for those who it has been prepared." You think about this situation, they're wanting to be great, right? And they have this idea that this temporal kingdom that they're trying to make him king. Every time you turn around, you see him, they're trying to actually make him a physical king, because that was their understanding. They had the understanding of him actually setting up this physical earthly kingdom, which doesn't come till later. And so when they asked him, can we be at the right and the left? They really didn't know what they were asking. And, at first I thought, well, maybe it was talking about when he was crucified, but no, it says, sit at the right and sit at the left. And you'll notice he didn't say there's nobody that's going to be sitting at my right or my left. But I can't help but thinking, your guys' position of wanting to be great, you're probably not going to be anywhere near the right or the left, because this kingdom that we're talking about is a selfless kingdom. And hearing this, the 10 began to feel indignant with James and John, calling them to himself. Yeshua said to them, "You know that those who are recognized as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and they are great men exercising authority over them." And this isn't a sting for leadership and congregations, but it is a situation in a lot of congregations I've been where the people that are the highest up, you don't see them, doing a sprinkler system. I remember one year I was at a fellowship and we did an entire sprinkler system. And not to say that they're like lording it over anyone, but there's only a handful of people that I know that have been super high up places that have actually got down to the very ground level and done some of these things. And hopefully, us as a congregation, we won't be like that. If we're in leadership, we should be involved in anything that we can. If we have a talent that, is even a ground level. I remember doing that sprinkler system. I wasn't in leadership, but I ended up doing a sprinkler system over like a 2-acre piece of land, and trying to do anything you can to do that grassroots level work. And I just think this is an awesome testimony of Yeshua. "But it is not this way among you. For whoever wishes to be great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life for a ransom for many." And so we see right here that Yeshua is telling them, if you want to be great in my kingdom, you're going to have to be a servant. And the next thing he does, I've done one time, and I wasn't really thrilled about it, but I know there's certain fellowships where they actually encourage everybody to do this. Yeshua, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper, laid aside his garments, and taking a towel, he girded himself. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with a towel with which it was girded. So he came to Simon Peter and he said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Yeshua answered and said to him, "What I do you do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter." Peter said, "Never so shall you wash my feet." Yeshua answered him, "If I do not wash you, you have no part in me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also the hands and my hands and my head." And Yeshua said to him, He who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but you are completely clean, and you are clean, but not all of you. And so you see the situation where Peter's attitude is, no, don't wash my feet. And Yeshua's telling him, I'm using this as an example, a kingdom principle, by doing something that not only was a lowly position, apparently in that culture, you had to be the very lowest of the group, the new guy, probably like me in leadership up here at Bridom. I would be the guy that would be, washing feet here. But Yeshua, here he is, God in the flesh, doing this and trying to teach them about his whole plan and purpose of being here, which is washing them. And it's just interesting how Peter takes this as an opportunity to say, well, okay, if you're doing, then wash everything. And he's like, no, because this act that I'm doing right now, this is sufficient to teach you guys what I've come to do. For he knew the one who had betrayed him. For this reason he said, not all of you are clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you, right? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If then the Lord and the teacher washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you should do as I do to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is no greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. And so, this principle is like I was saying earlier. We should, if we believe in this eternal kingdom, if we're thankful for what the Lord has done, we should take the opportunity to try and help one another. I remember a brother that I know that helps out a lot. He does so many things for the body. And he said, I feel convicted sometimes when I can't help all these people out. And I said, well, brother, you got to understand this too. To love your neighbor as yourself, that's a two-way street. And sometimes people that want your help, they're not loving you as they love themselves. And I said, so you can't beat yourself up because you can't be everywhere at once and help all these people out. And that's encouraging for us. If we have people helping us out, it's not that we can't take that, but if there's another way, we love our neighbors as ourselves. We try and find a way to make it happen to where we're not overburdening anyone. And so I think that's something us as a congregation, hopefully we would do, that we'd only take the help we really truly need so that that person that really is called to go out and help people can help the guy that really needs it. And so, I think that was an encouraging little thought. And this is two more slides and then I'm done. But let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also the interests of others. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Yeshua, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, coming in the likeness of man, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death of the cross. And so, thinking about him being the king of this eternal kingdom, and that the reason why he's the king is he gave it all, we can use that as an example. We have this kingdom, the whole point of us even being here, and everything that is the plan that God has for our lives, is for us to operate in his kingdom now by faith through congregations, but also to go out and propagate this kingdom to other people. And the way we do that mainly is by the way our walk is with the Lord. There's a couple times, where I've had people that work with me, you try and share with them, you try and drop this weighty truth on them, and it just falls on deaf ears. But then when you do some kind act, it's like they really start to want to have interest in, well, why'd you do that, man? I got to ask you, I've been out in the parking lot taking car parts, swapping people's alternators out in the parking lot, and doing these things, and that's really opened doors. So I really think that when we die to ourselves and do servanthood things, that God has given us talent. Mine's working on cars, so I try and help out, brothers and sisters that don't know how to work on cars. You might have some other talent, but if we lay down our life for the kingdom's sake, this eternal kingdom that's coming, hopefully we can draw people into it. Because, I was telling the kids the other day, I said, what greater thing is there than leading somebody to truth? Not that the Lord didn't have his hand in it and his spirit wasn't moving, but to be able to say, hey, that person was lost, and now they can be a productive member of the kingdom. I mean, I can't think of a greater thing. And the only way we can do that is by dying to ourselves and realizing every day, spending more time in prayer, because we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And asking the Lord, hey, what would you have for us as a congregation? Starting in my family, I'm gonna do better to make sure that I seek the Lord more in the things that He would have for me and my family to do, and hopefully we can be of some benefit to Brennan. And I encourage you guys the same, that you guys search and see if there's anything that maybe you can do that'll draw you closer to whatever plan God has for your life, and we can all be servants, and then hopefully Brennan can be that congregation that Rabbi Eric was talking about, to where we can affect people outside of this congregation. And so that's pretty much it tonight, and I hope you guys were blessed, and I'm excited about what God's going to do this year. And I just want to pray one more time, and then we'll. Abba, Father, we just thank you for this evening. I just pray that everyone that leaves here, that they would get home safely, and just continue to pray for all the people that are hurting and suffering right now. I just pray physically and spiritually that you would lead and guide them, and us as a congregation, Abba, that you would lead and guide us to whatever you have for our lives, that you would, through your Spirit, reveal to us the plan and purposes you have for us, and forgive us where we fall short, and help us to be a community that is able to be a witness to the people around us, and that we can draw people into your kingdom, your wonderful kingdom that is an eternal kingdom, a kingdom of truth, and a kingdom of love. And we just thank you for this evening. Thank you for everything you've done for us, and we ask it all in Yeshua's name.